Welcome back to my channel. This is Marlon. I'm so glad that you're joining me today. I have this beautiful Rainbow Bridge card featuring the new Rainbow Bridge die set from Scrappy Crafts. This new release is filled with so many amazing pet products. I will be sharing some videos later on next month with some of the other pieces from this collection. Here's a look at the Rainbow Bridge die set. We have 4 different dogs. I believe there's 3 cats. The 2 rainbows, one cuts out the backer for the rainbow and the other cuts out the individual pieces. I'm going to be doing some ink blending. I have my Altenew stamp wheel mat. I like to use this mat because it does tend to hold my delicate pieces a little bit better than if I were to leave it on my glass mat. I do still have to sometimes press it back down because I just lay it loosely on top. And so you'll see here that it did move just a little bit, but definitely much easier for me to do my ink blending. I have some beautiful Pink Fresh Studio inks. I decided to go with bright colors instead of the primaries. So I have Bubblegum, Apricot, Sunshine, Grassy Knoll, Seaside, and Candied Violet. I'm going to show you the first little layers of this rainbow with my ink blending. I wanted to leave that in because I was showing how I use my stamp wheel. So because I don't want to contaminate any of my colors, I started by blending my pink on the right side of the mat, and then I'm going to add my apricot over on the left side. I'll clean off my mat, and then I'll repeat with the remaining colors so that I don't contaminate any of those layers. For the purple, there are 2 layers for purple, so there's 6 colors right there, but there are actually 7 layers to this rainbow. And what I'll finish off with is the Candied Violet, which will be the darkest purple color. And then for my indigo, or the last layer of that rainbow, I'm going to add a candy, or not candied violet, but a soft lilac to finish that off. And I'll bring that in right here. I just wanted to share how I did that inking and cleaned off my mat before moving on to the next colors. So here's the 2 layers of the purple. This Candied Violet is looking really dark right here, but this definitely does dry back all of the colors. Once they dry, they will dry back to a beautiful pastel. And I thought that this would be perfect for this Rainbow Bridge card. I really love the release. As I mentioned, there are several different pet products that Sabrina has created. She has added on to her trifold, so she does have a couple of different die sets that will coordinate with her trifold system. If you missed out on that system, it was released last Christmas and it created, she had several different dies that worked with the system to create a beautiful trifold card. Now, the sentiment for this particular die set, it has the individual words that say, "So very sorry for your loss," and then it also has the shadow die. This is meant to fit on a 5x7 card, so the sentiment is a little bit longer. What I did to remedy that for my card is I cut down my base panel, which is going to be cut to 4 3/4 by 5.5 inches. And then I went ahead and created a cloud panel, which we're going to get to in just a moment. And I ended up cutting that down to, I believe I cut the panel's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. So I'm going to have a 1/4 inch reveal on both sides. I'm going to use those same ink colors to color up my sentiment. So we are going to make the sentiment rainbow like the rest of the card. I really loved these colors together and I thought that they were so cheery. You know, when you lose a pet, it's really difficult, and to have something that brightens your day with beautiful, bright colors and just a thought to say, "I'm really sorry," is Just a great way to support your friends. So there's my sentiment. I have added it to the shadow die, and then I have a cloud background, and we are going to ink up this panel. So I'm going to start with the same colors. We're going to start with that bubble gum. I add a very light layer here to the top. I'm going to finish off the panel with this top layer of pink. I just wanted to get something down before I moved on. I twist my stencil so there are 4 different sides to this stencil, and I just kind of move it around and change the orientation so that the clouds look slightly different. Some are going to be bigger than others, and then I don't worry about blending over the top of the next layer. So right here, I'm using that apricot, and you'll see that my brush does go over the top. You can use certainly use the stencil in a different way, starting at the bottom and working your way up. That way you wouldn't have any of the blending, but I just kind of like working from the top to the bottom. So I'm not going to bore you again. I'll add this one last layer, making sure that I clean off my stencil with that microfiber cloth in between each of the applications so as not to contaminate my panel. I will be linking the Scrappy Tail products that I used in the description box below. I will also be linking the store, the Scrappy Tail Craft store, so you can look at the other pet related products. There's some for cats and some for dogs that are in the Scrappy Tail Craft store right now. I do use affiliate links, which really helps support my channel. So when you use those affiliate links, I greatly appreciate it. So thank you in advance for using those. So here is our background. I did add a second layer of pink to the top, as you could see. And then I'm adding some water splatters over the top to give it that texture. And then I'll also use my Dr. P.H. Martin No Bleed white paint. I dry in between the water application, and I also dry when I add the paint just to make sure that I don't smudge it, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I want to move along quickly and I forget about the paint being wet, and then I smear it. So I'll just bring in that Ranger Heat tool again just to heat it. I'm going to color one of the dogs. I used a very similar technique with all 3 of the dogs. I add a base layer. In this case, we're creating a Labrador Retriever, and so I started with antique linen, and then I will color up the accessory pieces. So you can see that we're going to get a little bit of dimension with the ears and with the tail. The same is going to be true of the other 2 dogs. There are separate pieces for different parts of their body. Once I add this antique linen, I want to add a touch of yellow orange. And so this is called Sweet Mustard from Pink Fresh Studio. I'm adding it, contouring the sides, the top of the head, the tail. I will add a heavier hand going in a little further towards the center where the hind legs are, which will accentuate the waist and the hind legs. I'm adding a little bit of antique linen back over the top again to blend those 2 colors together. And then before I finish, I'm going to color up that collar with this Seaside ink. I thought I might have a little bit on my brush, but I just definitely didn't have enough ink on that brush. And then we're going to bring in, we want to tone this down just a little bit, and so I'll be using some tea dye, again, contouring around the ears and the edges. I did end up getting some glue on that right ear of the dog, and so I came back in later on off camera, and I just added another layer of both of the ears to cover up that little faux pas that I had on that dog. I'll use my glue press again just to add the puppy tail and the ears, and then we'll come back in with the collar to finish off this dog. These animals are just so cute. I love dimension, as you know, and just having the extra detailed layers is a touch that I always appreciate when I get my Scrappy Tail Craft dies. Going to add that collar on. I'm going to add a little bit more detail with that tea dye ink. And again, this is going to dry back quite a bit. It definitely does not look as yellow as it appears. It will blend back beautifully. I like to add dimension, as I mentioned before, so I will be using some foam tape on this project. I'll add my background to the A2 or to the top folding card base. Again, it's approximately 4 3/4 by 5.5 inches. So you can see now how that sentiment, if I did not use the larger card base, then it would be hanging over the sides with that shadow die because again, this was created. Sabrina does a lot of 5.5, what is it, 5 by 8 cards. So I've added foam tape to my rainbow. If you did not want to go bigger than an A2 size card, for this, I'm going to have to create my own little envelope, which is easy to do. But if you did not want to do that, you certainly could not use the shadow die, and then you could add your sentiment into 2 separate rows, kind of balancing it out on your card without that shadow die. That's another option that would work. Now, these clouds, part of the cloud is going to be on the rainbow and the other half is going to be hanging off. I want to make sure that everything is level, so I did cut some foam tape down. I added the glue to the top where it will be touching the rainbow, and then I also have that foam tape at the bottom that I added a little bit of glue to make sure that it stays down nicely. Again, this is going to mail beautifully because it's not going to have any creases when the postage meter goes over the top of it because I do have that stability with the additional foam tape matching with the foam tape that I added to the rainbow on the back. I'm going to do the same thing with our dogs. So each of the dogs, I will use a thin piece of foam tape just on the upper portion of their bodies. Their bottom is going to be sitting on those rainbows. So I just take this little piece of 1/8 inch foam tape, add it to the center of each of the puppies. I'll cut it down to fit nicely, and then I'll just slide their bottoms onto the little rainbow. So this card comes together beautifully. I love the cohesiveness of the rainbow with the background, the rainbow for the die cut. And then, of course, we did use those repeat colors on the sentiment. So repeating the theme throughout the card really does add a nice pop to it. As I mentioned, I am going to try to come back in April. Hopefully, I'll get a couple of these videos up. I have a few different products from this release. If you are a pet lover, then this is definitely a beautiful release with lots of ideas for pet moms, for pet dads if you want. I don't have the stamp set. There are several different sentiments that are available in the stamp set. So if you're looking for pet sentiments, that is another great option. Once I finish gluing this down, I am going to show you a close-up so you can see a little bit of the dimension that we have on the card, and then I'll have a final photo. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks so much for watching.